Deloitte presents The Tech Talk in association with CNBC-TV18.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Deloitte presents The Tech Talk in association with CNBC-TV18. Deloitte recently released the India findings of its State of Gen AI report that covers adoption trends, industry applications, and the evolving attitudes of Indian organizations towards this groundbreaking technology. The report highlights key areas such as the significant strides made in the IT and marketing sectors, the cautious adoption in finance and legal domains, and the reliance on off-the-shelf tools for quicker deployment. It also sheds light on the critical challenges around trust, governance, and preparedness, with data security and talent gaps emerging as notable barriers. Our experts today will unpack these insights and they will share their perspectives on what this means for the Indian AI landscape. I'm delighted to have with me Anjani Kumar, partner Deloitte India, Sunil Gupta, co-founder and CEO, Yotta Data Services, Jaspreet Bindra, co-founder and CEO, Ai&Beyond, and Sameer Dhanrajani, CEO, AIQRATE and 3AI. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Anjani, what an amazing work that has been put together by Deloitte. Did the findings surprise you?
Actually, we've been doing this report for the last 3 quarters. And, if I can provide you a little bit context so that, you have the history of it. So this is a quarterly survey that we are doing across 14 countries, across all 6 industries, and covering anywhere between 2,500 to 3,000 senior executives who have their hands on working in Gen AI projects, Gen AI POCs.
Right.
And we are trying to understand from them the scale of adoption, the scale of utilization, the risks, the return on investments, the governance, and the controls around that. So as we've seen over the last 3 quarters that we've published this report, it's not really a surprise. The good thing is India has the second largest number of respondents in this report after the US. So when we are speaking to them, what we are finding is that a lot of organizations are doing a lot of POCs. And they are doing POCs that cover all the 4 value levers. So they are looking at POCs that give them revenue enhancement, cost reduction, increase in process efficiency, or accelerating their innovation and new business development. But at the same time, they're also seeing that the costs, when they move from a POC stage to a scale-up stage, is becoming fairly high. So that's one consistent theme that we are seeing across the report. The second thing that we are seeing is the talent that is available to be able to run these models, to train the models, to moderate the models, to take out the biases. That also is not easy to come by. So we are seeing organizations, whether they are large or small, struggle with getting that talent in place. So we are seeing a lot of upskilling, we are seeing a lot of reskilling to make sure that the large opportunity, and that's something that is consistent, that we've seen across all the rounds of the report, that people generally and genuinely believe in the large opportunity. And this is across all the industries. They genuinely believe in the opportunity for it to transform not just their industries, their companies, but the entire economy. So they are committed to it. But here are the challenges. Cost is a challenge. Then having the right talent is a challenge. And we are seeing organizations move and do multiple things to try and overcome those challenges.
Very interesting. We will dissect each one of those points. Sunil, if I may get you in, Yotta is in a good place. It almost looks like you preempted the report and the asks of the clients that is going to come after this whole Gen AI revolution. Did anything surprise you?
Not really. And I would say that my anticipation was also not new, because whenever any new technology comes on the horizon, it is going to be costly.
Right.
It is going to be untested. Uncertainty is going to be there. People would like to try it out. They'll be excited about it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they may not want to commit bigger dollars to that because it's still uncertain.
Correct.
And that is where concepts like cloud started coming in our lives. That instead of people committing big dollars, a capital investment, or big people commitment to a technology, cloud enables them to try it out. If you are successful, scale it out immediately. If you're not successful, come out without too much of liability. So my investment, whether into data centers long back or into a general compute cloud, a couple of years back, or to it now, was that yes, AI is something which is not a fad. It is something which is here to stay. It's impacting huge number of industry verticals across board, personal life, professional life.
Right.
It is here to stay. What will be the challenges in adoption? And the challenges in adoption for sure would be cost, number one. You want the latest technology, but at the lowest possible cost. And secondly, in India, given that we are sitting on 1.4 billion population with 660 million plus having smartphones who are creating and consuming content every single minute, AI at the end of the day will become some tool, some agent, some app on your mobile. So if you're sitting on a large base of users, it is by default going to be successful and hugely successful in India. The requirement would be scale and cost effectiveness.
Yeah. 90%, Anjani, the report also says 90% of organizations are wanting to speed up their AI adoption. Scalability, of course, is a very, very important question to address in Indian context, right? How are they navigating? Are they rushing in? Are they cautious? They all want to be there, but what is really happening on the ground?
So what we are seeing is organizations are making deliberate choices.
Okay.
You talked about the scale and the cost. There is also the element of risk, which is with respect to the models, with respect to bias and hallucination. So what we are seeing organizations is to start making deliberate choices. And I'll give you an example. Organizations are looking at, can I look at use cases which are more internal to me? So look at finance use cases, look at procurement use cases, look at talent use cases. So for example, the CFO is using GenAI for scenario planning, for his budgeting. Similarly, the procurement manager is looking for analyzing of responses that come to RFPs and select who's the best placed vendor. The HR, the talent team is looking at creating customized learning and development plan for one individual based on her feedback, based on her performance. So we are seeing them look at some of these internal use cases to get comfort on the models, to look at how scale up works, how cost works. And also as they think about moving to more mainstream, more consumer facing, more regulator facing models, they want to be sure that these work, they have confidence, their people are trained, and then go there. So even, for example, if I can give you an example of a bank, rather than giving access to their end consumers of the GenAI model, they've actually given access to the call center agents. So it's a support for the call center agent to actually understand what the consumer context is and then have a conversation with her, rather than letting the consumer directly have a conversation with the model. Because the technology is new, the data sets are new, there's issues in terms of privacy, in terms of concerns. People are still trying to look at what's right for me in my context. And once they get comfort, we clearly see, the organizations.
Feedback mechanism also is stronger.
Absolutely.
Noted. Jaspreet, if I may get you in, we're talking about risk mitigation here. What strategies do you see can work in this scenario when we are looking at risk management in absence of really governance frameworks? What can work here?
We referred to the cloud, for example. And if you go back to when the cloud adoption was happening 15 years back, 20 years back, I think the same questions were being asked. There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of potential for efficiency, for productivity, for cost savings, for innovation, for growth. But the similar issues around, whether my data is safe, should I have cloud in-house, outsourced, etc. were there. And then as the technology matured over the next 10, 15, 20 years, cloud has become an integral part. And I think the same thing is going to be true for AI, but in a much more accelerated time frame. I will say three things. Number one is that if you think about a framework, generative AI is right now being used for what I call for me, as in what it can do for a single employee. And that a lot of that is for around efficiency, productivity. The next step it will move to is what can it do for my team, me plus my team. And we are already moving there. The third is what can it do for me, my team, and my organization. And Anjani spoke about a lot of those use cases which are happening, which are internal to the organization. And that is one key way of actually mitigating risk. I think as we get more guardrails, more safeguards, more confidence in the technology, it will move to the fourth phase, which is me, my team, my organization, and then what can I do for my customers, which is going outside the organization. And I think we are kind of seeing some initial use cases for that, but some of it will take a little bit more time.
Noted. Sameer, I'm getting you in to speak about this whole price conundrum. You know, on one side, you are looking at cost effectiveness. On the other side, you have better tools available in the market, but they come at a cost. And Indian companies are finding it difficult to stay balanced here. What do you think is likely to happen in the long run to ensure sustainability growth and absolutely to calculate the long-term ROI? Do you think Indian companies at the moment are facing that confusion as to how to go forward with the tech and looking at the costs?
I think the conundrum and the confusion is for the real. What Jaspreet, Anjani, and Sunil mentioned, in this whole aspect of GenAI, and I really call it a beast, if untamed, it can actually unleash fury. But on the positive side, it's all about the infinite possibility it may subsume for the organization. But if we look at the components of our enterprise, how exactly are they consuming GenAI? It's got 4 components: data, cloud, computing, and algorithms. Now, the fact over there is that today, everything with the advent of GenAI is democratized. Now, Anjani mentioned about, and it's also part of the report, about this whole aspect of organizations and enterprises in India going through this whole spate of POCs. Now, the fact, first of all, which is important to be considered for the enterprises is, are these POCs experiments or projects which will fizzle out, or it has a long tail in terms of developing an AI strategy for the enterprise or for the organization? And that's crucial because the sum total of the POCs put together cannot be a strategy. And which is where we have felt, talking to many of the C-suite and the leaders, that essentially for the first time, there is a concept of AI strategy which is creeping into the organization, which is all about innovation, transformation, disruption, and also the business growth.
Time now, gentlemen, to slip into a short break. But when we come back, more on this very special report.
Deloitte presents The Tech Talk in association with CNBC-TV18. Deloitte presents The Tech Talk in association with CNBC-TV18.
Welcome back to Deloitte Presents The Tech Talk in association with CNBC-TV18, where we are discussing the state of AI reports Indian findings. And Jaspreet, if I may get you in, which sectors do you see are likely to lap up this adoption and you see the scalability also much higher? And where do you see most traction industry-wise, sector-wise?
You see, AI and Gen AI, Mugdha, is a GPT. And I don't mean the GPT of a chat GPT. I mean a general purpose technology. And over the past 2 or 3 centuries, there have been a few of these general purpose technologies. The internet obviously is one, but even before that, the internal combustion engine, or something like the Gutenberg press, and a few others. And when these technologies come, the reason they're called GPTs is because they go generally across every industry, every aspect of business, and in fact, going beyond to your own personal life, society, geopolitics. And so since this is a GPT, I think in the medium to long term, almost every industry would have adopted it in some way or the other and would have benefits of this across functions, across industries. In the short term, however, and remember that the short term, we're really speaking about just about 2 years since ChatGPT came out and made the world aware of this technology. If you think of any of these big technologies that I spoke of, which came over the last 200, 300 years, what they did most of all was empower us human beings with these new technologies, which could help us become more productive, more efficient. And as any economist would tell you, there's a direct correlation between productivity, efficiency of human beings, and prosperity. And I think if this technology does nothing else, but just increase our productivities, efficiencies across different industries, across businesses by even a few percentage points, it is a landmark technology.
Sameer, question to you is around compliance and regulatory frameworks. While there are some in place, there are likely to be much more stringent regulatory frameworks with data security, etc. How do you suggest companies now making this adoption be very careful about coming regulations and also the existing regulatory compliances?
Well, actually, it's a very pertinent and I would say very topical question, because the more we talk about the art of possible movement to promise to life, putting those risk compliance governance mechanisms would be very, very essential. As the panel members already mentioned that, look, when we talk about the EU Act or US acts about what they're doing about data privacy, I think one of the very key observations stood out what Sunil mentioned and alluded that, look, this entire aspect and the framework of GenAI implementation is nothing like a toy box or a sandbox, if I put it in that way, unless those experimentations are happening in a controlled, simulated environment. Putting that in a public environment or in a larger sphere will be absolutely catastrophic. So that's where, I mean, putting those, I would say, public, I would say, backed, or rather, I would say, government-backed kind of, let's say, sandbox environment for banks, for financial services, healthcare companies, or even, let's say, manufacturing and CPG and retailer companies to come together and say, look, how can we do this experimentation in that sandbox where aspects of putting those risk mitigations, guardrails, even I would say a lot of compliance mechanism can actually be seen, can be observed. And one of the things which I think will be crucial in this entire journey is something which I would emphasize is evangelization by the CXOs and the business leaders. The more they understand, the more they internalize GenAI, the better it becomes for that organization, and it has a cascading impact. Because many a times, it's gone through I would say, a fallacy of this whole job displacement and GenAI unleashing its fury. But I think the whole piece of how the GenAI adoption needs to happen starts from the top. And that's where then those guardrails, those risk mitigation policies have to come in place. So this is, I would say, a very apt time for the government, for the, I would say, Indian enterprises and the ecosystem to come together.
Anjani, we spoke about a change in culture, a change in looking at GenAI, learning, understanding it more. Sameer very rightly mentioned it. You spoke about upskilling and the lack of awareness and education about all of these technologies. That also is a huge part of the report. Where do you see the solution?
So, as we think about what's needed, let me start with a couple of statistics. So, in India, today we have the AI talent pool is anywhere between 700 to 750,000 people. And we think over the next 4 to 5 years, that number will reach about 1.25, 1.3 million talent pool. At the same time, the AI services market is growing at 25 to 35%.
Right.
So there is going to be a clear gap between the talent that we have and the services. And these are services India for India as well as India for the world. So that's one gap. The second is also, we talk about the quality of talent which is coming from our educational institute. So that is not necessarily industry ready.
Employability indexes.
Employability indexes, not that great. So with these two issues, I think there are three things that need to be done. And I'm so happy to say that the government and the academia and the industry is already working towards that. The first is clearly a greater industry-academia collaboration.
Right.
So if you think about the, as you said, about the students who are coming out of these schools, they don't necessarily have real-life experience. They have not worked on real-life projects. They have not seen real-life models. So with this academia-industry collaboration, if that can come together, I think it makes people coming out of those institutes that much ready to take on the world. So that's one. The second is increasing the number of grants, the funding, both from corporate as well as government for AI research. Because as the grant increases, as funding, more and more people are incentivized to do work in this area. And this is, it's completely democratized, right? People with ideas can. And lastly, setting up of phygital AI incubation labs. Because what that does is people at that physical center can get connected with researchers, with mentors. They can actually have a sandbox, and throughout the discussion we've talked about how experimentation is the key. So people, students, people who want to change careers, who want to get into this, they can come to these labs and work and create new things.
You have the last word, Sunil. Strategic alliances is the way to go to understand this better. Every other panelist has spoken about it strongly. Where do you see innovation, application, and alliances now coming together?
I think that's the only way to go, because it's a huge ecosystem to deliver the end product, which is productivity increase or some benefit which you are expecting from AI. And below that, there are value layers, starting from somebody who is running the infrastructure, the data centers and the GPUs, to the person who is actually building models, somebody who's arranging for the data. That itself is becoming a new industry altogether. To somebody who's actually then using that model, fine-tuning that model, plugging that into an application so that the users can use it, making maybe a small app for the end users to use it. So unless and until, and then obviously somebody like Deloitte, who is actually reaching out to the customer, making them understand their inherent problems, making them understand the data they have, how they can use that data to solve a business problem, which they themselves may not be aware. They may be latently aware, but they may not be explicitly aware about that. So this entire ecosystem has to work together. But yes, as Anjani said, that all the starting points about the, how to improve the access to talent and skilling is something which I can see, as a participant in this ecosystem happening very actively. Government, for example, in India, a mission, besides other pillars, have put in skilling and education awareness as one of the pillars and put some great funds to that. I have seen educational institutions coming out with specific courses around that. And one of the gaps they were finding it hard to fill in was the actual hands-on working on AI, because theoretical classes are okay, but until the students have got access to those the best chips and the technologies and the frameworks and libraries, they cannot really become ready for developing the models or putting them for use. So this is, I would say, is a fantastic ecosystem emerging, right? People are genuinely excited about it. People are genuinely sort of seeing the benefits will emerge and working very hand in hand, and happening very subtly, but this I can clearly see happening every single day.
Wonderful note to conclude our discussion. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us here in the studio. And Jaspreet and Sameer, thank you so much for taking out time and having this conversation with us, and for all the wonderful insights.
Deloitte presents The Tech Talk in association with CNBC-TV18.